Hey everyone, Russell here, and it's April. The sport fishing season is just around the corner. April 15th is opening day for most rivers, brooks, and streams here in New Brunswick, and May 1st marks the opening day for most lakes, ponds, and reservoirs. In today's video, we explore a species of fish that you can target well before that season, as soon as the ice goes out. For many of my fellow sport fishers, you could have put your rod away last fall, hunkered down for the winter months, only to grow an ever-increasing itch to fish. For some of you, you can't take it. You bore small holes in the ice somewhere around the province to satisfy the fishing urge by catching, smelt, pickerel, perch, or some other species that's lurking below the ice. I bet others like me managed to lack the outdoor summertime by living vicariously through various YouTube fishing channels. Well, today we look at a species of fish that you can target as soon as the ice clears. Known as a living fossil or dinosaur fish due to its appearance, there is nothing quite like this fish. If you've ever seen one before, you'll agree. Imagine pulling this up and not knowing that it's coming out of the water at you. There are 24 different species of sturgeon in the world, in which we have 2 here in the New Brunswick waterways. The short-nosed sturgeon and the Atlantic sturgeon can be found along the coastal regions of New Brunswick and the New England states. Let's take a look at it more closely. They have these string-like appendages called barbels, which are long, sensitive tubes that the fish use to drag along the bottom and help distinguish food items from other particles and substrates that are in there. The mouth is located at the bottom and is a long, toothless tube that can easily vacuum up the bottom floor. Nothing surprising here from what we've learned so far, they're bottom feeders. What makes these fish particularly neat though is that they have 5 rows of bony plates along their body called scutes for protection, much the same as a turtle shell or a bird's foot. The dorsal fin is located at the back, and the top lobe of the tail is longer than the bottom. If you have ever held one of these fish, that you know that they have a texture similar to sandpaper. They look smooth in pictures, but it's really neat to grab one of these fish. Carefully though, because those scutes along the body are razor sharp, especially in the younger fish. Speaking of age, these fish have a long lifespan and they mature a lot later than other fish. They have an average lifespan between 50 and 60 years, and they don't spawn until they're around 15 years old. And even then, they don't spawn every year. Spawning is heavily influenced by environmental factors, so things need to be just right for them to spawn. Females can lay up to 3 million eggs in one time, and when they're fertilized, they can stick to the rocky riverbed. After they hatch, they kind of float down to low current areas where they will spend a year growing up to 20 centimeters. After that, they head for the heavier currents in search of bigger food. Since many of the species are migratory, they can easily be targeted, and in fact were. They have a deep past with many commercial uses. The largest sturgeon on record is a beluga, the Volga estuary, measuring 7.2 meters and weighing 1,571 kilograms. It's a lot. In Canada, you'll find the biggest sturgeon in the Fraser River on the west coast. That's not to miss out on the lake sturgeon that can be found in the Great Lakes. These fish have been and continue to be sought after for their eggs. If you enjoy caviar, this is the fish it comes from. Atlantic sturgeon and other species in the Great Lakes allowed Canada to become one of the world's largest caviar producers. As the demand for caviar and sturgeon meat increased, the threat to their sustainability also. Governments in North America started enforcing regulations surrounding the fishery and caviar production, which shifted the pressure to the species overseas, making Russia the largest producer and also threatening the population of the species over there. They are, however, making a slow and steady comeback. The more we learn about their behavior, their spawning needs, and develop advancements in aquaculture techniques, the sustainability of this fishery is looking more positive. As I was researching this fish, things just kept getting more interesting. Did you know that we have a local caviar producer here in New Brunswick? Acadian Sturgeon and Caviar is a local business that has been producing wild and farmed caviar for some time now. They are located in Carter's Point on the lower St. John River. I was hoping to have a segment for you with this video showing their production and how they go about business, but I couldn't get that arranged in time. I really hope that I'm able to get there and to check out that facility and show you guys exactly what goes on there. Stay tuned for that adventure. So to fish sturgeon, you're going to need a boat, a kayak, a canoe, something to get you out into the channel. I suppose you could just fish from shore if you had access to the land and a really strong arm. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what I use. Again, disclaimer, this is not the perfect setup, but it is what we use to catch sturgeon. So you're going to need a medium to heavy rod. This is a surf rod, and this one's 7 foot. It's a Ugly Stick by Shakespeare. It's just a combo. You can pick it up at any local fishing store, and it'll set you back under $100. But again, I use this for stripers and sturgeon and bigger fish. So if you plan on doing any other types of fish, especially stripers, you'll want something a little bit heavier. Also, you'll have to pick up a package of sliders, swivel, and a single barbless hook. These are regulation where we fish on tidal waters, and so make sure that you have the barbless to avoid any kind of problems that you might have. You'll also need a sinker. This is a 4-ounce sinker, 3-ounce could work as well, and some leader line. This is just run-of-the-mill fluorocarbon leader. I'm just running a monofilament line here, so you can go ahead and battle it out in the comments whether to use mono, braid, or fluorocarbon, but whatever you have, that's what I choose to fish with. So I'm going to set that aside. So I'm going to show you what we use as a rig to catch sturgeon. Again, many people have different types of equipment that they use, but this just works for us. So I'm just going to show it to you. We're going to take one of these sliders and we're going to put it on the main line right away. Once you have the slider on, you're going to tie on a swivel. We'll leave knot tying for another video, but most people seem to know how to do fishing knot. Remember to always wet your line when making that. So now you have the slider on the rod end of the swivel. I'm going to use this fluorocarbon leader just because it's more abrasive resistant, so it can bounce along the bottom a lot more than just monofilament line can, and so it takes a little bit more of a beating. So again, I'll just tie a knot on the other end of the swivel, being sure to always wet your knot before you tighten it in. So here we have the slider on the main line to the swivel, and then we have a leader. Now this leader can be various lengths depending on the conditions that you're in. If you want your worm to kind of come up off the ground a little bit, or if you want it shorter and tighter, then you can have it shorter. Let me tie on this hook. Again, this is a single barbless hook that you're just going to gob the worms to it. So here is what you should have. You should have a leader line, single barbless hook, leader line swivel, and this slider that you can then attach your 4-ounce or 3-ounce weight to. And there you have it, folks. You're completely set up to sturgeon fish. Now take this hook and gob it with worms. I mean, like, fill it all up with worms, even more, so that the fish, because they're bottom feeders, they'll suck this up, and if they get a hint of any metal or sharp edge, they'll spit it back out and just keep moving on. But if you can get it completely gobbed over with worm, one thing that we like to do, because worm wiggles off a little bit, is just to take a plastic that you have in your bag, and then once you put your worm on, you can just kind of cap it off with a little bit of that rubber that will just keep it as a kind of a stopper there. You can also use these trout nuggets that we have. They're great too. They add a little color. But they also can get soft and kind of slide off just like the worm. So we find that the rubber piece of any kind of plastic works really well with just hiding the hook and keeping it so the worm stays on there. Here's the idea. This gets thrown out to the ground and you have this slider. And this slider allows your line some movement. but it keeps it down on the ground. And again, if you have fast moving water and you have a lower leader, keep it down on the ground. If slower moving water, then you can afford to have a longer leader. With this rig, you should be ready to catch your first sturgeon. It may take a little bit, but that's all you need. This past month, my brother-in-law, who will be on many of these adventures because he has many talents, were able to get out a couple of times and chase the sturgeon. So here are a few clips of those adventures that I wanted to share with you. As you can see from the footage, this is a popular fishing spot for sturgeon. Many people are here enjoying the weather, catching some fish, and having a great time. Remember, it is in fact cold outside in March and April on the water, but if you dress for the weather, nothing beats it. If I could offer you any advice for the outdoor adventuring that you will do, it is to invest in the appropriate clothing. Nothing will put a damper on the enjoyable time like a chill, or worse yet, a wet chill. Bait up that hook and chuck it out there. Let it sink to the bottom and allow the line to move freely in the slider and the weight. You want the fish to take the bait and not feel any resistance of the weight until you set that hook. And even then, no fish is guaranteed. Go ahead and ask Andrew, he knows. Once hooked, you might think that you snagged a log. These are strong fish. But with a little play, you'll be able to net these beauties and search for a bigger one. Special note, here's the current NB record holder for sturgeon in New Brunswick. I'll put a picture up here of the whopper that he landed this year. Great job, Paul. Well, that's it for today's video. If you have any helpful and constructive comments, please feel free to leave them below. I hope that you've enjoyed it and that you are now armed with some more information about this very unique New Brunswick fishery. There's a lot out there, so get outside and start exploring east.